This show is episode 4, Netflix, Surviving Death. And the fourth episode is all about signs from spirit, right? How cool is that? It's so funny because I sit there and watch the show and then text, voice to text, right? So the show opens up with Penn and Teller, the Magician Act. And of course, they have this great act on in Vegas, and they've had it for years. And it's interesting because they don't believe in this. So I don't know, because they're so adamant about it. They don't believe in signs from spirit or talking to spirit. And I really find that interesting. Maybe it's because they might think that it would take away from their work, which is possible because because we know magic is not real. It's a sleight of hand trick, that kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know their reasoning, and I've never heard them mention anything other than they think mediumship and spirit communication is bogus. And of course, that's their right. That's their right. But I find it very interesting that they would have such an impression about mediums or spirit communication, let me put it that way, when their business is so closely related. When you can talk to valid mediums and you know that they're getting message from spirit because the information that comes through is evidential and can't be looked up online or in social media or in someone's obit or whatever it is, right? All right. So that didn't really go into any further description online, but I thought that was interesting. So those of you who are on the live Zoom webinar, if you'd like to share an experience or a sign from spirit, raise your hand and I'll get to as many people as possible. All right, so I have to say, Mike the Twit is finally getting it. He's finally getting it because he talks about seeing butterflies everywhere, in the chandelier, in the theater, and the likelihood of the butterflies getting in the theater, I guess, were pretty rare because of all the ins and outs and doors and all that kind of stuff, and elevators and whatnot that you'd have to enter to get into the theater area. And then he talks about the butterflies in the chandelier and like in the dead of winter or whatever. And it's amazing. He's really amazed. So I have to say, yay. Mike's getting on board with all of this. And he's not, at least in this show, he wasn't so irritating. Which is good. I want to like Mike. So I'm glad he's getting better. So I am glad he's getting better. I want you to understand, many times people will associate an animal or a ladybug or a butterfly or whatever with their loved ones in spirit. Grandpas are great for feeding the birds, and you might see cardinals, you might see a red-winged blackbird or a crow or whatever. The animals are not your loved one. Can your loved one affect the animals? Oh, you betcha they can. Just like they affect you. When they are with you, you can feel them, hear them, see them. And they can also implant, if you're claircognizant or clairaudient, I suppose, ideas, thoughts, words inside your head, inside your being, which can direct you and help you to move toward or away from something that spirit thinks you need to pay attention to or avoid, I guess. Right? So I found it interesting how he kept on talking about the butterfly, which was really cool because he hadn't mentioned that in a previous episode, or he hadn't gone into as much detail about it. Now, then Laura Lynn Jackson, the long blonde-haired medium, talks about different signs from spirit, one of them being coins. I have a little story to tell. I have a couple stories in this to give you an example. When we first moved in our house, I think maybe a year after we moved in the house, I was, gosh, let me think out. My daughter was 4, so I was about not even 30 yet. And I was vacuuming the rug in the living room. Mind you, it was all carpet. So I was vacuuming the living room, and I turned to put the vacuum away in the closet, and I turned around, and there was a dime in the middle of the floor. Now, there's no way in hell I would have missed that because it was in the middle of the floor. But it sure popped out at me when I turned around. As I mentioned, I think it was last week, I talked this much about apports, which is spelled APPORTS. And these are things that spirit kind of drops on us, something that just enters the room. I find that so cool, so cool. And if it hadn't happened to me, I would say this is a bunch of hooey, right? Again, open-minded skeptic here. So I believe it when I see it, and I've always asked for signs. So when I first started developing my mediumship, and I first started learning about spirit guides, I thought it was a bunch of crap. I'm sorry, I really did. I thought it was just a bunch of crap. So I always had to test. I had to test everything. I was probably a pain in the ass to the teacher. So one day I thought, you know what? I knew at that time that there was something going on with spirit and with me. I didn't know who it was, what it was, but I knew that some of the information that I was getting, I could validate, and that was freaking me out, right? So I thought, okay, I'm going to make this hard. I want to see a little boy with one shoe and one blue shoe and one green shoe on. I'm thinking, there's no way in hell. Well, I'm here to tell you the very next day I was grocery shopping. And I pushed my cart in line behind a woman who had a toddler boy, maybe 2 years of age, in the shopping cart, sitting in the shopping cart, his little legs kicking away with one green shoe on and one blue shoe on. Well, let me tell you that from that day forward, I believed in spirit guides. I also believed that spirit can pull off just about any facet of communication with us. They'll draw us to it. Like, seriously, I could have gone to any other aisle and checked out my groceries, but I didn't. And at that time, my intent wasn't even on what I had asked the spirit guide for. I'd completely forgotten about it. I just pulled up behind this little guy, and oh my God, I was totally in shock. So ask your spirit people for signs and make them specific. Let me tell you, make them specific. However, the teacher in me comes out and says, make those signs specific, but then be open as to how they're delivered. Okay, so make those signs specific, but be open in how they're delivered. Prior to becoming a minister, I didn't want to become a minister. I hate religion. I still hate religion. I hate someone choking their belief down my throat, telling me I'm going to go to hell if I'm not baptized or if I'm not a Christian. Or no, that's the first thing that will like turn me away. So when I was going through mediumship training, I had like taken probably 30 or 40 classes, and I only had like 6 classes to go before I could become a minister in the spiritualist church. Well, with my history, I didn't want to become a minister. And the pastor of the church put it off for like 6 months. And she finally said, Lisa, you've got to make a choice. You've got to decide, because this won't be offered again for another 3 years or so. Well, so I was going golfing that night, and I told Spirit and I asked God, okay, I want to have a bird peck the top of the golf cart I'm in. Well, it didn't happen. And I was like, good. On the way home, I was driving down the highway and a bird actually pecked the top of the car and died because I was on the highway. So I got my sign and it was like, don't you question me. I'll give you the sign. Yeah. So there's a lot more behind that story, but I did wind up becoming a minister because of that. And I know at first it freaked me out, but there's more to the story. So anyway, so be open to the signs from Spirit, and how they come through is up to them. So in our neck of the woods, in the upper part of the country, we're in snowstorms right now. You know, we're in winter, and so the likelihood of seeing a butterfly, slim to none. Likelihood of seeing a fly, or maybe a mosquito, slim to none. Ask for those weird things. However, again, be open to how Spirit provides them. I always get ladybugs. Doesn't matter what time of year it is. Doesn't matter. So again, be open. Doesn't have to be a live mosquito. Maybe you read a book to your grandson and there's a little mosquito in the book, right? So be open to how it happens. All right. Let's see. I have Janice on. I'm going to bring her up. Well, go ahead while we're playing with that. Tell us your sign. What happened?
Well, my husband passed away 26 years ago now. And I've gotten sign. I was 14 when I met him. So we were together for 28 years and he was only 45 when he passed.
Mm-hmm.
But I myself and the family have always gotten signs right from the very beginning. And so 2 weeks ago, my birthday, January 14th, my son, I'm in North Carolina. My son is in Ohio. And him and his girlfriend were out shopping for antique furniture. So I get a text, and this has happened a few times with a license plate on it. Now, my husband's name was Arl, A-R-L. I have a picture of Arl, 0069. And so my son's girlfriend said, oh, this is, your husband's name. I said, Jill, I just turned 69 yesterday. 0069. So we get that a lot on license plates that happen
right
randomly. Yeah.
So you know what's funny, Janice? I did a meditation today and my mom came through, and she doesn't come through often because she always chokes me up, but this was a tearjerker. And you know what? Her birthday's January 14th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, her birthday was January 14th.
Yeah.
So this is so you bring on here and mentioning that is kind of a message from my mom, like, yep, that was valid. That's a valid meditation, right? It wasn't me making it up. So I'm glad that you accepted that as message for you. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing, sweetheart.
You're welcome.
I'm going to put you back to attendee, okay?
Okay.
All right. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. So that's how Spirit speaks. Let me go just a little bit further and I'll get Ann on. So be ready to go, Ann. Okay. After death communication studies, we're talking about hearing, smelling, sensing, or receiving a touch. It doesn't matter whether you're clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient, clairgustient, whatever. It doesn't matter. It all is dependent upon your spirit people's ability to get through to you, and they'll use any means possible. When my husband's niece passed away, I know she's with me because my whole left side tingles. The whole left side. It's almost like she kind of scooches over to me. And I know when Jesus is present because I can feel a man's hand, like a heavy man's hand on my shoulder. And there's different things, different things that happen. My grandfather, I smell his pipe, which that's a great sign. And then the other grandfather, I smell his cigar. So allow spirit to come through as they will, right? And you'll know that they're there. But push for those signs. And you can ask your deceased loved ones, your angels, your guides, to bring you specific things so you'll understand who it is when they're there, or have them touch you here or on your shoulder or on your back, on your nose, whatever, right? So that will also give you a good idea or a good sense of identifying who's there with you. All right, Anne, I'm going to bring you to panelist. There you are. Hi, sweetheart.
Hi, honey. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good.
Very good.
Okay, so this is very recent. I'm sure you've seen my postings, but my uncle passed away recently on December 21st.
Mm-hmm.
And right before he had passed away, I was up at Bronner's, and I was just, for some reason, pulled to the snow globe, and it had the nativity scene in there. And I'm not one to ever be attracted to something like that. I am, I was Catholic and all that stuff, but never been pulled to
Right.
something. So I bought it. Then he passed away. And a few weeks ago, I had been studying the numbers 3, 6, and 9. And so I reached out to him before I fell asleep, and I said, Uncle Stan, I need you to send me a sign if I'm really supposed to focus on these numbers 3, 6, and 9. The snow globe stays by my bedside. And sure enough, the switch underneath it is very hard for me to turn on. It's very taut. So the next morning I wake up and it's on. So I thought, okay, you answered my question. Last Friday, I said to him and my angels as well, I said, look, you guys, I've been waiting for this woman to call me back about this job. And I need to know now, today, if I have it or if I don't. And so I put that out there at 3 p.m. She called me back at 6:12 Michigan time, which was 3:12 California time. And every time I simplified those numbers, it was either a 3, 6, or 9. So I went, and she told me verbally I had the position. So I did. I put it to the test. And here you go. I mean, they responded 3 hours later, but they responded.
Don't
and
you
they set
love
it out
it?
there for me. Absolutely love it.
I just
absolutely
love it. Yeah, I know you are very spiritual and you're very in tune with the spiritual world. Absolutely. So I'm really glad that you tapped into that.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I didn't think it was going to be that quick, but they really showed what they could do.
I'm telling you what, they can. So, I do have to say, so I have been watching your posts about your uncle. How old was he when he passed?
He was 9 years older than me, so he was 62.
Yeah, because he looked really young. Yeah.
Very young and very unexpected.
Yeah.
Very unexpected. We had made a lot of plans to get together this summer for the first time. We have been separated physically. We haven't seen each other physically in over 20 years. So this was supposed to be our summer to finally, see each other again. So,
well, I'm sorry.
But he's with me all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's lovely that you have that connection, but I'm sorry it's not in person.
Right. Well, I think I feel him more now than I did when he was with, when he was in Ohio. We didn't see each other.
Probably.
It's absolutely crazy, but I can so feel his strength is with me, completely with me.
That's awesome.
So,
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, sweetheart.
Thanks, honey.
Right. All right, my kids. Let's keep on going. So anyways, I'd like to talk about the couple who lost the son. His name was Gabriel. And seeing a dime in between the woman and her daughter when they were swimming in the ocean. So remember, they were pretty skeptical here. The mom was not as skeptical as the dad was at first. And then mom wasn't seeing the signs, but dad was. So that's interesting, isn't it? mom and daughter, after her son's death, were swimming in an ocean. And mom, in the ocean, in the water, floating around, is a dime. And that is what he said he was going to leave, or the medium said to watch for. And what are the odds? So you tell me that isn't coincidental. You cannot, absolutely cannot tell me that that's not a possibility, right? So they can do anything. And then, of course, then dad gets in the ball game and he just decides to start writing. Why, I don't know. Someone must have told him about inspirational writing, which is what I just taught a class on. I love it. And so he begins to write inspirational letters from Gabriel. And it's such a beautiful thing. And then we jump to the Forever Family Foundation. Many people who lose a child, as they did, I forget their names. Anyways, their world crumbles. And sometimes their marriage crumbles. And these people, now not saying that their marriage has been great and they didn't go through those type of things, but they use their son's passing to help other people who are going through that trauma. And I really believe in that. Taking any trauma that we have faced, whether it's a loss of a child or loss of a parent or whatever it is, taking those traumas and allowing us to work with them to help other people, and thus actually helping us heal ourselves. I really believe, wholeheartedly believe, that if we have faced something that is traumatic or that is life-shattering, if we live through that, mind you, I didn't say survive. If we live through that, maybe we can help someone else because there's a reason you lived through it. I believe my job, and probably a lot of your jobs on this earth, is to serve other people. Yeah. So, and maybe that's what this is all about, right? All right. So Jan Striller Staniszewski says, I asked my son for, oops, you just went away. My son for a sign today as he turned on the radio, our mother-son song, Forever Young. As this happened, my husband was yelling for me to come see the huge cardinal sitting on the bird feeder on our window. I love signs. Jan, aren't they great? They can be so immediate, right? And usually they're like within a day. If we're going to get them, they're probably usually within a day. I just think that's great. Amy says, I just explained the hand on the shoulder all the time. It happens, Marianne Graham says a beautiful robin was in a tree directly outside my window this very morning. I know, right? What are robins doing out this time of year? They should all be down south, I would think. Yeah, it's just amazing. What about the lady who had asked for the sign of a red balloon? And then the next day she has 3 red balloons outside her window? What are the odds of that? Seriously. You can't make this shit up. There's no way. So Connie says one of her friends lost her 18-year-old son to testicular cancer 20 years ago. Since then, she's devoted her life to spread awareness to save other men. And she wrote a book. Yes, exactly that. Exactly that. So if we're facing something like that, we can make such a difference in other people's lives. And again, someone might say, well, how can I help someone else? I can't even help myself. But very often it's through that service to other people that you do heal. You help to heal yourself through that. Then we move on to Joe Scheel, who's the psychic artist. And I've met Joe quite a few times because I also work in Lilydale. He has a house there and he teaches there and whatnot. And I've always been fascinated with psychic art because that's how I started. Going back to the spiritualist church, at that time, I was a professional artist. I was painting murals on schools and all over the place and doing art fairs and stuff like that. And at that time, the pastor was a medium. The other gal that was taking the ministerial classes was a medium. And I was the only one who did art. So the pastor asked me to start doing psychic art. to give the messages from spirit, as well as use pastels or paints or whatever to paint their loved one's portrait or whatever they chose to give me. And this is why I was so attracted to Joe's work. And whether you're a trained artist or not, I haven't found that that really matters. I talked to a friend today. Her name is Heather Wilson, and she's been painting for a while now. I don't know if she paints with oils. It kind of looks like oils, but I don't know. Anyways, but she's been painting for a while now, and her her paintings seemed very ethereal. And she's also a medium. So I called her today, and I'm really excited to say that she will be joining me on an Insight with Psychic Medium Lisa Bousson episode on, I think, the 25th of March. So watch for that. I'm pretty excited about that. And she'll describe to us how spirit channels through her in her work. Cool, huh? Yeah. So there's so many different ways that you can use your ability, or that spirit can impress themselves upon you. Then we go to Elijah. Sometimes, remember, Mom was unable to communicate or receive signs. And of course, she was heartbroken. Who wouldn't be? Dad kind of had an inkling whether he might be. I think there was still some doubt there, but that's fine. Because sometimes if there's not concrete evidence, people will always question. But Mom was receiving nothing. And what I've noticed, that if someone is too close to a situation, too emotionally drained or stuck on receiving communication, it may not happen. I think being distraught blocks your perception. And I know it does. When my best friend passed away, I saw her leave her body, and then that was it. It was probably 4 months later that I finally noticed, or I finally intuited that she was present, because I intuitively saw her pink plaid tennis shoes. Couldn't see anything else. And to this day, I rarely see any higher than maybe her knees when I see her, when I notice that she's there. Now I sense her. I can feel that now. But at the time, and for years afterwards, nope. I couldn't communicate other than short little clippy words, very choppy little piecey things. But I could never see her other than her pink plaid tennis shoes. So that's how I knew she was there. So even someone such as myself, who's a professional at this, you'd think I would have my shit together. No, not when you're emotionally distraught. No. So I understand that this is why this happens. Plus the fact, there's a lot of variables in here, and there's a lot of reasons why this happens or doesn't happen. And it could simply be that her son wasn't able to tap into her radio station, right? We talked about radio stations a couple episodes ago, where everybody has their own frequency. And maybe her son couldn't tap into hers so that she would know that he's there. All right. Anne, who was just on, says she noticed that with her clients too. When they are too grief-stricken, it seems like a wall appears, between the dimension of spirit and their own. And you're right, it does. And sometimes, as I've mentioned in the past, mediums have you wait. The going rate is like 3 months. And the theory is, you let the spirit person go through their past life review, where they judge themselves and they see where they did well and where they could have improved and things like that. And give them time to acclimate themselves and become adept at communication, all that kind of stuff. However, that's not always the case. And maybe it's my experience speaking. I don't know. You know, it is said that some mediums can reach the angel level, some mediums can reach the discarnate level, so the first layer of the aura field, right? The holding tank, purgatory, that whole space, right? And some mediums can only reach angels, and some, you know, it all depends upon how spirit works with you and how we affect our own energy and how we build our own energy. But for me, I have never had that problem associating myself with whatever energy. I just haven't. And I'm not patting myself on the back. It's just what I've found. So that someone can communicate right after they die. My husband's niece, I talked to her 2 hours later. And it took me an hour to find out she'd actually passed. So, you know, but it was 2 hours after she passed. And the communication was very clear. And it was very clear up until she was about ready to make her crossing. And then it was about a week. So that might be that little variable stage right there, right? And this might blow your mind, but you can even, as a medium, communicate with someone who has already reincarnated. Because we don't incarnate with our entire soul. Part of us has to be connected to God, or to connected to the world of spirit. And that's the part you can communicate with. So the oversoul, if you will. Any of those are ways that you can receive signs from spirit. You don't have to be a medium. Absolutely not. You don't have to be a medium. I had a man call me today. He just moved into a new house and knows nothing about mediums. Absolutely nothing. He knows nothing about paranormal research other than what he's seen on TV, like Ghostbusters and stupid things like that. But he called me. He's smelling a stinky old man, is what he said he was smelling. He says every once in a while, throughout his house, he will smell this odor, like someone hasn't washed in a while, right? This guy knows nothing about this. So the possibility of communication is huge. Again, you don't have to be a medium. Because in my mind, everybody's a medium. You're a mammal. And you've been using your clairsentience, which is your mammal sense, your gut instinct, since you were born. Probably since before you were born. Everyone's a medium. Everyone has that ability. Everybody does. Oh my gosh. Evelyn says she lost both her parents this year and have yet to get a sign from either. Maybe I'm not looking hard enough. Oh no, Evelyn, that's not the case. That's not the case. In that instance, my educated guess is that you're going through a little bit of a PTSD type thing. It's interesting too, what I suggest, if you are having difficulty receiving messages, no matter what your history is, I would start to meditate. And if you received my newsletter today, there you go. It gives you a little bit of insight. If you didn't, that's okay, of course. But even start with a guided meditation, simple guided meditation, and keep at it, because you do need to train your left brain or your conscious mind to shut the hell up. Same lady, Evelyn says, are not all spirits able to give you signs? Oh yes, they're all able to give you signs. But again, the type of signs depend upon, one, what your strength is, so to speak. If you're clairvoyant, your natural mediumship ability is seeing visions in your mind or outside your body. If you're claircognizant, in other words, you get these random, weird, stupid thoughts in your head, and you think, where the hell did that come from? Probably wasn't you. You know, you get these gut instincts like, oh my gosh, stay away from that car, so you back up a little bit. Things like that. Those are your spiritual gifts without going into a whole class. So just be open to what you're receiving, not how it's received, or like, because our signs can be anything. So my thinking, Evelyn, is that they're coming to you in different ways. Listen for lyrics. Listen for the words that like touch you, or the signs on the billboards, or in a book. You know, if you randomly open a book called bibliomancy, it doesn't have to be a Bible, but use a book read the passage that's there. I thought I had one of my books here. It was hiding. Okay, so here you go. Evelyn, this is for you. I have one of my books. Mind you, it's out of print right now because I have to get a new publisher. So don't go looking for it yet. All right. So I'm just going to randomly open to a page and read the passage that's there. And again, you can use this do this procedure with just about any book. All right. So here's what the book says on this page. It says, and I quote, "To grow spiritually and at a more rapid pace, we choose to incarnate with an abundance of struggles on the physical plane. It is our goal as a spiritual being to become godlike, to progress to such a degree that we once again return to and are assimilated into God's energy. The faster we learn the lessons of the soul, the faster we return to our spiritual home." Well, if I were to interpret that, I think you need to take a class. But start with meditation. If you're not into that, if you're not ready for that step, I would start with a daily meditation. And again, cut yourself some slack because you're not going to be perfect at it, but work at it, right? The more you meditate, and mind you, I'm not saying you're going to see your folks in your mind's eye, but it will help you to focus and notice the little slight nuances that maybe you hadn't noticed before. I love it. So yes, they're all able to give signs. Pamela says, "Have I read The Afterlife of Billy Fingers? It's a beautiful book." Yes, it is. Yes. Afterlife of Billy Fingers talks about in between lives. And I also promote Dr. Michael Newton's Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls. Fantastic works. I see the name of Dad's boat every now and then, and it is an unusual name, Spindrift. Is that a sign? You betcha. You betcha it is. My grandfather's boat, and he had seven sailboats. He was a sailor. And everyone was Mimi, because that was my maternal's great grandmother. So there's Mimi 1 all the way through Mimi 7. So whenever I see Mimi, of course it could be my Mimi, which I never met and I wouldn't have any connection to her, but I know it's my grandfather because of the boats. So trust it. Trust it, those weird things. Talking about classes. I just put the 8-week mediumship intensive course on my website, which is just lisabousson.com/classes. So I just put it on there yesterday, Sunday, something like that. So it won't start until the first part of April. It is on a Zoom. It is a Zoom meeting, and there's going to be a lot of work, a lot of practicing with people that you don't know, so you can make sure that it's evidence and not you guessing or not you knowing something prior to. So that's exciting. I love teaching mediumship. I don't teach it real often, but this one's more an intensive. I wouldn't suggest if you were brand new, like you don't know what a spirit guide is or you don't know what a chakra is, this wouldn't be the class for you. However, I would say if you're intermediate beginner or an advanced beginner through intermediate medium, I would say this is the class for you, because each student will be assessed as per where their starting point is. So there really is no competition between the beginning student and the intermediate student, because everyone's going to be addressed personally. We will have a Facebook group, and there's lots of live videos and handouts and exercises while in class, as well as homework, so that you can practice those skills. And then at the end of the course, we'll have a live Zoom spirit gallery. How fun is that? Yeah, it's pretty exciting. It is. So everybody, Connie has a question. Yay, I'm glad you chimed in, Connie. I was about ready to sign off. I'm glad I saw your hand.
Hi there, hon. So yeah, I don't know if you mind sharing about this, but I would love to hear more of your story, how you got into mediumship, how your development went, classes, teachers, and how long it takes. I know everybody's different, but if you want to share some of that, your path with us.
Sure. I know that the earliest that I can remember is the age of 4, when there was 3 girls in our family, and I was the middle. I was very sensitive. I was always very sensitive. And when I saw men walking out of my bedroom closet one night, of course, I screamed and I hollered for my mom and blah, blah, blah. And my mother was very direct, very left brain, very analytical, right? She was in dental, so medical field, so very direct and to the point. And she opened up the door, turned on the light, and says, Lisa, there's no one here. Shut up and go to sleep. And then closed the door. Well, it happened a couple more times where I asked my sister, my older sister, do you see this? Are you not seeing this man? Are you not? And she just, shut up, go to sleep. There's nobody there, blah, blah, blah. Right. Well, eventually, when you're 4, you stop thinking, maybe I should just not tell anybody. So I slept underneath the covers for years. However, I knew that they were there because I could feel them bump against my bed. I could feel the, like someone's knees hitting the side of the bed, right? So I slept underneath the covers forever. And then that passed, and around the age of 6, I was in the front yard all by myself. We had a huge yard with like a bazillion trees. And I was in the yard all by myself, and all of a sudden this great big gust of wind came out of nowhere. And even though I didn't know what or who God was, I knew I was speaking to him. In that revelation, in that gust of wind was an understanding that we have more than one life to get everything done. So I didn't know what reincarnation was at that time, but that's what they're talking about, right? And I remember even at that young age, thank God, because otherwise it's too much. It's overwhelming. We can't get it all done in one lifetime. So that's the beginning of my story. Yeah.
How about your classes or your training? How did you really develop consciously?
Around the age of 35, granted, there's a lot of stuff that happened in between those, 6 and 35, of course. But around the age of 35, I started receiving in excess of clairsentient and clairaudient and clairgustient symbols and words and signs from spirit that I would be validated within a day or two. And it happened like 3 or 4 times a day. So it was like an onslaught of information here. And at that time, I kept on hearing, go to church, go to church. Well, you heard my story about the church. There ain't no way I'm going to church. No. Been there, done that. Don't want to do it again. So one day, this is probably about 6 months after all this started, and I seriously, Connie, I thought I was going insane. I really did. And one day I was driving around doing something, and I drove past there was a sign on the street that said psychic fair today. I'm thinking, well, what the hell? Maybe they can tell me what's going on. So I walk in this building. It was like in a chain store, like a mall, like a, like strip mall. Lo and behold, the psychic fair was held in a spiritualist church. So the church was in the strip mall. And the pastor, actually, who I didn't know was the pastor at the time, actually did a reading for me and told me everything that was going on in my life, verbatim, and as well as told me about the tattoos that I had, which you couldn't see. So I thought, okay, there's got to be something here. Well, then I started with a couple classes, and meditation was the first. And that's all she wrote. That's all she wrote. It took me about 3 or 4 years to get through to the end of that training, which was the ministership. And that was my formal training in the spiritualist church. But I've, like you, it's a never ending search for enlightenment. It's a never ending search. So now I've been ordained in 2 different churches along with the spiritualist church. So that quest, to get better, become godlike, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
As the book said.
And you started doing readings just a few years after you started developing then consciously?
Right. Yeah, because we had to go through the mediumship course. And of course, we started doing readings in the church, at the church service, as part of our class. And we had to get up and do messages and that kind of thing. And in a spiritual church, you have to be very proper. Like these and thous and And that is so not me.
Yeah.
So it was weird. It was weird. But so it was probably about when I became a professional. And when I say professional, I mean, I'm starting to charge for readings. It was probably when I was about 38. Because when I was still in the church, I still hadn't gotten my ministerial papers yet. I started charging for readings. People wanted to book. And then it wound up with the psychic art, right? So I started that. And then it just turned into regular mediumship without the psychic art because that's what people were asking for. So that's what we did.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And I just got to share, do you know about Waniwak in Wisconsin, a spiritualist camp?
No.
It's in Waniwak, Wisconsin, near New Lisbon, tiny little town with cabins around. It's been there many years. Anyway, I started going there. I was like 18. Somebody told me it was like a 90-minute drive from my house. And so like once every summer, some friends and I would go and, have readings, stay overnight sometimes. And anyway, and I would have psychics. Like one time they invited me to hang out with them at night. They didn't invite my friends, because I don't know, one of them said they saw me the night before. A big blue spirit came in and they knew it was me. But anyway, so then years later, until then I moved away from Wisconsin, like in 89. But I would go back to visit, and in 2012, I went back and had a reading there. And the manager of the camp was the one that gave my reading. Anyway, she offered me to come and do readings there. And I've been told my whole life that I can do this, but I had never practiced. And I didn't know there was even classes or books on it. I just didn't. I thought you either did it or you didn't. And so
I get it.
And so all I had done for practice, I went to spiritual development school, like a couple months in California. And we just focused on meditating for 40 minutes and then would read each other's chakras. I mean, it was a tiny little experiment. So anyway, I moved there and I was going to stay there the whole summer. And I only stayed there for like 5 days. I had one really powerful experience where I connected with this young man's grandfather in that morning meditation. But other than that, I was totally flailing because people would just show up. You didn't have appointments. And one day I had 4 people in a row, no time to meditate in between. So anyway, I didn't know I was going to have to do the church service the following Sunday already. I was a total newbie. So I got PTSD and I was like, so that's why.
There is that one thing where you do have to, I want to say, guard your own energy, right? Because people are all excited and people are in need. And it's important when you're serving spirit and serving the community that you're preserving your own energy. You must make time for yourself to do good work, right? To meditate, to ground yourself, have time off is just as important, right? To disconnect. I say disconnect. You're never really disconnected, but you're not actively seeking that, right? So I'm glad that you had those experiences. I did, because that's what makes you who you are. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it was good, but I got but now I know. Now I'm taking classes and I'm going to learn the proper way. So
good. Well, thank you for sharing.
Thank you, dear. I appreciate it.
All right, honey. You take care. Bye-bye. All right, kids. So again, the class will begin April 6th. We'll go through May 25th. It is on a Zoom. It's a Zoom meeting from 7 to 8:30 each night, and lots of practice, lots of work, but good challenges, fun exercises, things like that. So anyways, next Monday, 8 o'clock, we'll be doing episode 5 and maybe 6. I'm not sure. I have to rewatch 6 to see if there's really enough material to do a live. So we might just bundle them all together. So watch the Facebook pages, Immortal Peacock, as well as my Facebook page, Lisa Bousson. And have a nice night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for joining. Love you guys.